Talk Data to Me, the podcast, with Rashmi and Avinash from Uxley, breaking down the world of corporate data.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Talk Data to Me. I'm Chris Gregg. Great to be joined by Avinash from Uxley once again. Hello, how are you doing today?
Hey, good morning, Chris. Always great to see you, and I'm doing fine, thank you.
Great. We've gone festive in the studio. We've got our decorations.
Of course,
up.
I can see that. It's rubbing off already. I feel like I'm in a Christmas stall.
in your Santa's grotto. So what we're talking about is something that, a little bit like Father Christmas, sometimes seems a little bit too good to be true. The wonderful world of AI. It has been on everyone's lips this year. It feels like the world's moved a long way since this time last year, and it's only accelerating. But, you know, sometimes AI projects do fail. And when you're doing a traditional IT project and it goes wrong, maybe it's over budget, it's behind schedule, didn't quite deliver the ROI that you'd hoped for, you know, we learn our lessons, we shrug our shoulders and move on. But somehow when AI projects fail, it's a lot more dramatic. It's loud, it's public, it's expensive in ways that feel a little bit different. Would you say that's a fair assessment?
It is indeed, you're right. With traditional projects, they were delayed or they failed. I wouldn't say failed. They did not deliver what was expected to that extent. But they were delayed, or whichever way we want to put it, for predictable reasons. Like you said, either scope creep happened, or some budget overran. There was poor requirements gathering, and the business never quite understood what they wanted as well. And it was also interpreted in a different way by the people taking that technical point of view. But it's very different, like you said, with AI projects, right? They fail for fundamentally different reasons, and when they fail, right? So first of all, there is what I call the determinism gap, right? So traditional software is deterministic. So no matter who is going to input into the system, the output is always static. So if you input A, for sure X, Y, or Z, the output is always going to be B every single time. It's not like that with AI. We need to understand that first. There's a difference between being very static in the sense that I put A and I get back B. But with AI, depending upon how you ask the question and what is being interrogated, if you input A, for instance, you might get B sometimes. You might get a B hash or an improved version of B, or occasionally you might even get C. And people or organizations who have not actually wrapped their heads around this fundamental shift are the ones that are struggling, right? And why? Because they're applying these deterministic management frameworks to probabilistic technologies. That's the first reason, right? So the sooner organizations get to appreciate how AI is distinct from traditional ways of software development or projects, that much more better, number one. Number two is the feedback problem. You said, in your question that when traditional projects fail, they fail loud, right?
Yeah.
Or rather, you said AI projects fail and they fail loud.
Yeah.
Actually, on the contrary, the traditional projects fail louder simply because the feedback loop is that much more quick. Because how does a traditional project fail? For instance, the system crashes, the report is not running, right? So the feedback loop, users start to complain immediately, right? And then you take preventive action on that one. As opposed to that, AI fails really quietly, right? It produces plausible sounding outputs. It it adds its own biases in the way that it thinks is appropriate based on patterns that it is being able to generate. And nobody realizes this essentially, right? So AI does its job, but it's around the humans who interpret that outputs, who also need to understand a bit better. And thirdly, and I think this is critical because the other two can be controlled in some way, shape or form, the AI projects have got a much shorter time to regret. What I mean by that is traditional projects, what could go wrong? Your report did not produce the expected output, or the result of that project did not go very well, but you had time to correct those, and it doesn't matter if it took a little longer than that. But with AI, you go live with a project on Monday, and by Wednesday you discover that it's making its own decisions, it is violating the regulations that are in your that have been set up in your organization, alienates customers or hemorrhages money, right? So most organizations are treating AI adoption like a technology upgrade, whereas it's actually a business transformation. It's the difference between installing, let's say, for instance, new software as opposed to a new accounting software, which is probably an IT thing, versus changing the way your financials work.
Yeah.
That's a business-wide transformation.
Yeah, more
so
fundamental.
it's the same thing with AI. So traditionally, you gave a list of things to do, and the consultants delivered to that. With AI, because it's got its own brain power, so to say, it can go wrong at times, and that's what we need to control. And that's why when AI fails, it fails really, really bad.
Yeah, and I think, as you say, the problem is sometimes you don't realise because it gives you a plausible outcome, so you don't necessarily notice, and I think that's a lot more dangerous because you might be thinking everything's working perfectly and it isn't. So how many kind of AI initiatives don't meet their expected outcomes as a sort of a percentage, would you say?
I mean, there are various researchers on this subject from Gartner, from Harvard, from MIT, and all of them. But if I averaged it out, the number is quite staggering. It's around 70 to 85%.
Wow.
That's what the research is telling us. It may not be failure, but it may also be the fact that it is failing to meet the business expectations. That's how I would say it. Yeah.
But that is a staggering percentage, 85%. For anything else, you'd give up. You'd be like, right,
absolutely,
we need to do something different. What's actually going on out there? What are you seeing there?
Honestly, I think it is a lot of confusion. So everybody's excited about AI, but even in the best AI-driven companies, you go back and ask them, okay, that's fine, but how are you actually doing it? And that's where it starts to get interesting. I'll give you an example. Like last month, I was talking to an ex-colleague who had joined an AI-first company, right? So he showed me beautiful dashboards and an impressive demo of how they are gathering their information, and all looked good while he was presenting it. And then I said, okay, show me, how do you use this every day, right? Because if you have put in something as a use case to AI, it means that you're trying to get a bit more out of it. You're trying to probably reduce the time that it takes to produce those outputs, whatever the reason might be. And then what does he do? He just quietly pulls out an Excel. That's the reality of the world, right? That's where the real work is happening.
Yeah.
So it's not that AI is wrong, right? In many instances, we have created a problem that is probably not useful to us. So you can't blame AI for that, right? And that's exactly what I keep seeing. We are deploying it without thinking how it fits into people, how people work, right? So you ask any a company that has done AI project, and you ask them about, okay, what problem has this solved? What's the value you're getting out of it? What's your ROI? And then after that, there's some uncomfort, let me put it that way. There's quietness in the room, right? Because people are, and don't get me wrong, these are like 100K plus investments that are going in there to solve a problem. But unfortunately, the problem has not really been articulated very well. So, because there is a lot of hype, your competitors are talking about AI, everyone's saying AI, oh, I'm using AI for this, I'm using AI for that. That is, what happens. So, what generally happens, and again, this is my take, I mean, I'll be very honest, but this is based on my limited experience within this area, is you have a smart Alec coming in, he's learned AI, is sort of wanting to do something, and then he puts together a PowerPoint presentation. He impresses everybody by saying that, look, these are the 4 things that we could do. And without giving much thought, he starts to build that model, right? And then what happens? after a certain amount of time, you have a AI system that works, but it is solving a problem that nobody had because nobody thought of what problem is that solution going to solve. So I think there's a little bit of that thought that needs to be given as to what am I going to solve as a result of this.
Not just using AI for the sake of it because you think you ought to be, but actually, doing a solution-led approach and working out why you need it.
Correct.
What about these so-called experts that have suddenly appeared that are coming in and saying, I know everything there is to know about AI? Is that even possible? Because it's such a new technology.
Very interesting question, that one, right? And you're not the only one. Even I was, on that bandwagon where I thought until and unless I knew everything about my data, about my business, about the models that may be required, not technically, but at least I knew what I wanted and things like that. But you know what, Chris, it is very difficult to find such a person, right? It just doesn't exist. So what do we have today? We have a mixed bag. We have the academics and the researchers who can explain you transformer architectures in their sleep. But what their experience has been more theoretical. They have done it in controlled environments. They have not worked on bad data. They have not looked at the business challenges. They have not worked in so-called the real business, right? And then you have on the organizational side, you have the data engineers who built brilliant systems, right? But like I said, the smart alec problem a while ago is the same thing. I'm so eager to do something with AI. Organizations are pushing for it as well. But what happens is you have an AI solution probably that does not give you any result, or the results that it provides are not useful to anyone. So either it remains as a toy, or that's the other thing. Then you have the business leader. He might know that the AI is going to reduce my say customer service costs by 30%. But he is not able to understand why is AI giving me some weird results where it's asking me customers to do certain things that violate, my policies, my organizational policies, or even some safety regulations and so on and so forth. So the human in the loop has got to vet the outputs. It needs time. It needs to evolve. It needs to be corrected, right? So of these, who is qualified now? None of them. Right? So you will say then, okay, what actually works, right? So what we actually need is a combination of all the three people. The business guy who says that this is my problem, this is what is causing me the biggest headache, this is what is costing me money, so I need to improve this. Then the engineer can build that, and then you can go to the researchers and academics or whoever is the so-called knowledgeable person. I'm not going to say expert, so who has got better knowledge, go to him and check with him if the architectures are fine and if this is how it should be done. So it takes a little longer, but in the long run, instead of doing it in 2 months time, take 4 months, but what you get out is a perfect solution, right? And you know what, last 5-10 minutes, however long we started this podcast, we have said AI so many times, and it's not just us, and not because it is a podcast based on AI, but these days no conversation, no meeting, no call is complete without mentioning AI in some way, shape or form, right?
Yeah, it does seem so. So where do you think that's coming from? Why is everybody getting so obsessed with AI?
You're right that everything has to be AI driven these days, right? Whether you talk of recruitment, whether you talk of any aspect of life, until and unless it says we are AI enabled or we use AI in some way, shape or form, we are not going to get the traction, right? So I'll tell you a very interesting thing. About a year and a half ago, while this AI hype was, in its earlier stage than now, I got a very funny phone call from someone, and I just picked it up because these days you don't know whether it is from your customer or is it some random person calling. And this was a marketing call, and the guy said, "Oh, you know what? We have created a system that uses AI to set your meeting agendas. And I'm like, hold on. There's quite a trivial problem to solve, isn't it? Like, I mean, so I asked him, what's wrong with the way we set agendas today? I mean, there should be an improvement if I'm going to use AI. And I'm not making this up. This is an honest call. Like, what is AI going to do? How is it going to help me even to set up my own agendas? Because it's my meeting agenda. You may improve the wording of it, but beyond that, the agenda is mine. So when I asked him, okay, tell me, how is this AI going to help me to set up my meeting agenda? And there was a little bit of silence. Probably he ran out of the script. I don't know what happened there. And then I pressured a little bit more and I said, okay, can you tell me, if I bought into your product or whatever you're selling me, how will I know that it has been successful? How can I measure my success? Fair enough. You have got something interesting, which we cannot think of. You're unable to tell me what the benefit of that is going to be. But how will, even if I bought it, how will I now measure that it has been successful or not? It is creating better agendas that I could do. There was even more silence.
It's a good question.
And then a click, and then the call ended. So, I mean, come on. So, what is happening?
Poor guy, he probably had a little script that he was going through.
Exactly.
Blew his mind.
Yeah. I felt bad because I did not mean to push him on, but the trouble is, nobody is having a problem that they are trying to solve, right? So, they just felt like, okay, I should do something with AI. Maybe I'll be able to sell something. And that's it. You get a few marketing guys and you start calling and you say, hey, and I get it. So don't get me. I mean, AI has definitely got a place in today's world. But the problem is that there's a lot of pressure. Your competitors are already coming out and announcing AI initiatives. What they are doing, whether they're running Excel in the back, doesn't matter. But because those flashy headlines are coming out that we have started an AI initiative and all that, you are under pressure. Your board is asking you, what's our AI strategy, right? But nobody wants to be left behind. Now, the problem is, if you say, or if you hear, and this is my personal opinion again, if you hear AI in every sentence, those are the organizations who are actually using Excel in the back. That's my, I mean, I'm sorry, but it may not be that bad as bad as Excel. But I'm trying to give you an insight into what is really happening. On the cover, it might say brilliant. We have seen books that the blurb says is an excellent book.
Yeah.
You open it, you've seen movies, right? Trailers come out.
Trailer's brilliant. And the
exactly, and then the movie is
letdown.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's exactly what's happening with AI. Just putting AI on the cover, people are thinking, I may get away with things, but actually you do not have you're not solving any problem for me. That's the biggest.
Do you think it's become the point where it's just the latest gimmick that if you don't put AI on it, you kind of feel like you're not going to sell anything, like the word digital a few years ago, or just it's become meaningless?
So yeah, I mean, see, every so many years you have a new technology coming in. We began with emails and we are inundated with spam. We don't know how to control it. Then you had the .com. So every company felt, I have to have a website. Didn't matter what that website did, whether there was no purpose to it. All it was that everybody's having a website, so I need to have one. It's as simple as that, right? Most of these websites were terrible, right? Some companies may have even lost millions. I don't know, right?
Yeah.
But at that point in time, just as it is happening today with AI, nobody wants to stop and ask, maybe we should plan this out better. Maybe the outcome is more. Let's look at what am I going to solve. Take that breather. Take a breather, and that's exactly that's what is happening with AI. However, there is a big difference, right? So, if the website did not work as expected, if it did not bring customers that you expected, there was no problem. It was a problem that could be solved in other ways. But with AI, it is that failure which we spoke about at the beginning of this podcast is much faster and is quite expensive as well.
Yeah.
The difference is the consequence, right? A bad website in AI could have meant bad customers. Today, bad AI is a lot worse. It can mean regulatory violations. You have got GDPR and all that. Back in 2001, probably the regulations were not so strict. You could have algorithmic discrimination. So think about hiring and loan disbursements and all that. Because there's no human in the loop, and the AI has got so much autonomy to dictate, it may put in biases, like I said to you earlier, right?
And that does happen because it's the data that it's trained on. So
Exactly.
It's based on stuff that may well be biased.
Absolutely spot on. The data may not be biased, but the trouble is, if the data is unclean, you're just creating more chaos on that one, right? So what you need to do is make sure that your data is of an appropriate quality. Make sure that there is governance on that data. Who gets to see what? And we'll come, talk about it in detail. But coming back to your point and why we should be more careful about AI, it's safety incidents, and like we said just now, bad data leads to bad decisions. Not only that, remember, this data is being used to now train your next generation of agents or whatever you might want to call. So bad data is going to lead to even more bad decisions and even more chaos, right? That's the challenge with AI that we have today. And then the financial impact, right? So you invest 100K, 150K, 200K or whatever, but if you do not have the ROI, then it's difficult to fix it. It's going to be much more expensive, right? So my suggestion is first clean up your data.
Yeah, absolutely. So what does actually work? What separates the projects that succeed from the ones that fail?
I mean, I would like to give you quite a romantic answer to this one, but you know what? It's like healthy food, right? Nobody likes it. So in that same way, it's just that the boring stuff works. The basic stuff works. It's unglamorous, right? It's the think it through. Let's think it through first. What I mentioned just now, that works, right? I'll give you an example. I have just come out of a project where we saved 4 hours every week for the customer. This is not going to grab any headlines. This is not glamorous at all, right? It's not revolutionary. Nobody's going to come and interview me. You've done a great job. You've saved 4 hours for your customer. Not happening. But the good thing is it works. There are no errors. There's no drama. It just works.
Consistently.
Right? Consistently. We can actually show the ROI. Now think about this. 4 hours every week is over 200 hours. Over 52 weeks or whatever, right? And if you can imagine for this customer, that they have a loaded rate and all that. So it translated into, the labor cost that we saved, translated to 12K over the year. The project itself cost around 15, 17K, something like that. So, you have a definitive ROI. Within a year and a half, you have recovered your investment. It's yours now for keeps. And this is only one department probably, or one problem. Now when you do this organization wide, just imagine the impact that it's going to have. Of course there is some investment that's going to happen because there will be other use cases and all that. And compare now that with somebody who said, no, we are AI first, we just want to go big bang, we want to transform everything with AI. They start a project, they put in all POCs and everything else. We've probably covered this in a previous podcast about how POCs never make it to production and all that sort of stuff. But 18 months later, you see that you started on a grand scale, but you have very little in actual use. So the difference is, one started the 4 hour per week saving that I just spoke about. They started on a solid foundation, right? Whereas the other started with ambition. So the difference is, one started with foundations and a defined business value, and the other started with ambition.
Oh, okay. So when you talk about foundations, what do you actually mean? What does that actually look like in practice?
The only way I can explain this to you is to tell you what we do when we get into a new client, right? And we have trained our teams also to follow the same thing. So the first thing that we ask them is, show us your data. And when I say show us your data, it's not like I'm asking them to show me a dashboard or a report and something like that. I really want to see your data.
Yeah.
Where
properly.
does it live?
Yeah.
How do you access it? How accurate is your data? Who is responsible for the upkeep of the data? And when we ask these questions, guess what we find? Most of the times, the data is in a mess.
Yeah.
Right? Not because people are incompetent, but because nobody has treated data governance as being critical.
Yeah.
There is no defined ownership. We keep talking about it, and I think reams and reams of papers have been written on how critical data governance is. Right. Let me give you another example. So we had one customer in the past. They had a single source of truth. We always talk about single source of truth. I think that's the catchword. It's been there for, I don't know, since the beginning of 2000 or something. But for everyone, the single source of truth means different. And in this particular instance, although the customer had a single source of truth, it actually was 7 different spreadsheets, and there were 3 people who were actually synchronizing it week on week. Right?
That doesn't sound like the word single to me. There's 7 of them.
No, but at the end of the day, what I'm alluding to is someone maintained those 7 spreadsheets.
Okay.
And finally, the outcome of that hard work at the end of the week would be one clean data set.
Yeah.
But then you repeat that again next week. So to create your single source of truth also takes time, money, and the rest of it, right? So, and then I asked the customer, okay, who owns this data in your organization? Who decides on the format? So let's say if an email is wrong or if an address is out of format, who sort of looks into that? Blank stares in the room, right? And this is not an exaggerated example, but it definitely happens. I mean, there is always that, wow, we didn't think about that. Oh no, actually we don't have anyone. Sarah in some department, she's got a spreadsheet and she'll look after that. So there are no answers on the table, which means you're not thinking about your governance. So that's the problem. And to that group of people in the room, then I said, we first need to fix this. Yeah. When we say you have a single source of truth, we do not want 7 spreadsheets to be worked on by 3 people week on week. That does not do it. But then they pushed us back saying, no, that's not going to happen. That will take months. I mean, there's so much customer data and this and that. Why can't we just start with AI? Well, you can. And that's what we are talking about today. That will lead to a very quick failure. And that's what I explained to them, that it will fail. And then you can spend twice as long if you want to fix it, because you'll need to fix your data and your system. And plus, you'll have, burnt your budget and credibility by then. What do you do? So we did the ROI mathematics together. Option 1, spend whatever, 40K, 50K, whatever it takes over 6 months to fix your data governance and improving your data quality. And then deploy AI. That works. Option 2, spend 80K deploying AI now. And then repent later, spend another 50, 100K to fix it 12 months later. Decide what you want to do. And when you put it like that, the decision becomes obvious.
Yeah.
Right? So fix your data first. Not sexy. But when you deploy AI, it works. And the ROI can be proved much better that way.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. So tell us something practical. If somebody's listening and they're thinking, oh no, that's us. what are we going to do about this? What would be your practical advice for them? How do they get started? What should they actually be doing?
I don't know if I can make it more flashy or more, but I'll tell it to you in very simple terms. If you are a leader who has started to us who's talking to us that I want to take an initiative, or, I need to do something about AI. Maybe you have a board pressure, maybe you have your competition pressure, whatever. Walk into your leadership meeting and the first question that you ask your team is, how do we track our KPIs every day? Just listen to the answer. Simple, right? Don't judge, don't interrupt, just listen. If you hear someone exports, we pull it into Excel. And like I mentioned just now, Sarah has got some spreadsheet somewhere, right? You've got your answer. You are not ready for AI. You need to fix how your data flows into your organization first. Once you've got that, ask who in this room owns the customer data quality? Who is accountable when customer data goes wrong? If nobody can answer that question, you've got a governance problem. And here is the thing. Governance does sound bureaucratic and boring, right? But it is actually answering very simple questions. Who owns the data? Who can change it? What are my quality standards? Who is accountable when it is wrong? And how do we fix it? Without answers to these questions, we are going to have a challenge.
And I mean, it sounds to me like these are the kind of things that companies would have needed to be doing anyway before AI. These are just fundamentals of data management.
They are, but unfortunately, in our eagerness to adopt AI, what we have done is we are pushing all of these under the sheet, under the carpet, and we're trying to make AI work, right? So just continuing from that discussion, right? If you do not have good data quality, if you do not have good governance on your data, right, and you are thinking about going ahead with AI for whatever reason, then what you need to do, Chris, is basically jot down all your AI initiatives that you're thinking of putting. It's very simple, right? And for each of those initiatives, as a data leader, you think, what is this going to solve? What specific problem within my organization is this going to solve? How much does this problem solve me now? Or cost me now, sorry, right? How will we know if AI solves it? And this is what I'm saying, take a step back, think, right? What is our target ROI? It could be very simple. Like I said to you just now, very unglamorous, 4 days a week. There's still something that you can measure on, right? And lastly and most important would be, what if this breaks? What do you do if AI breaks? Because you suddenly become so reliant on it, and you are clueless when it starts to give you wrong answers. What's your plan B? So always have that plan B. And if none of these questions or some of these questions cannot be answered clearly, then I think you should pause your AI initiatives, and if you still went ahead with these initiatives in some way, shape or form, you'll have an experiment or a very expensive experiment with no outcomes, with no hypothesis, right? And maybe this way you will kill most of your stuff, the projects, but because you have looked at them, honestly, they don't even have a clear value. So, even if you went ahead and built on them, they will not give you the ROI you are expecting because they are built on ungoverned data. I'm sorry, it may feel bad, but it may also feel like admitting failure, but it's actually a smart move. Stopping something that won't work so you can invest in something that will. It's only a matter of time. I'm not saying kill it completely, but until you have got that foundation right, which I spoke about a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
So get your data foundation right to make AI work. Govern your data, right? And to the skeptic who is saying, but it's going to take a long time, come and talk to us. We have got an excellent tool like Exelytics, which can bring forward your timelines from say 6 months or whatever amount of time to 6 weeks or even under that, right? So there are tools, and I'm not saying it's us, but you need to focus on that first.
Now let's talk about ROI more specifically. How should companies actually think about measuring AI success?
Difficult one, but I'll try to answer it, right? So when you're trying to calculate ROI, or many organizations, as I see, are so excited about AI that they think about ROI at the end as opposed to at the start. And also this is where, whichever way you do it, at the beginning or at the end, there is a lot of fantasy maths that's going on, right? Somebody will tell you that this AI will save you 10 hours a week, right? So then I ask, who's 10 hours? What will they do with that time instead? Will we actually reduce headcount and reassign those people to higher tasks, or will those 10 hours just evaporate? And usually the 10 hours just evaporate, which means that ROI is not real. This is just wishful thinking, right? Real ROI is one of these things where you can convincingly tell your management or your team that, look, real ROI means we reduced processing time by 60%, which led us to handle growth without hiring 2 additional FTEs. That's 80K in avoided costs. We cut invoice errors by 80%, which was causing 120K in annual disputes, write-offs, and customer issues. We can now respond better to quotes. They are now faster by 3 days. Our win rate has improved by, 10-12%, and it translates to say 400K of additional revenue. We got 15 compliance violations if you're talking about BSFI and all that, and if we would not have caught those violations, we would have been fined say 50K or whatever the number, right? So you notice the pattern here. These are when you have a very tangible outcome, these are all specific, these are all measurable, that's when you will have success in your projects, right? And now you compare that to some PowerPoint presentation that says, use our tool, or this AI will enable you to improve your decision making. And how do you measure that? Better customer experience. What customer? By how much, right? It will increase your efficiency. Okay, what does it actually mean in dollar value, right? If you think about the example that I gave you on our project where we saved 4 hours per week for the customer, right? That's tangible. That's measurable. We can track it every month, every week, and we can see the time saved. We can calculate the exact cost savings, right? We know exactly where it will break even. That's real ROI. And companies that demand real ROI at the beginning of the project, before they start any AI initiatives, are the one that will succeed. Right? Because if you cannot articulate value before you build it, you're probably solving the wrong problem, or the problem doesn't exist. Make sense? Right? I mean, I get very passionate because I can see there's a lot of money that could be used otherwise in a more efficient way, right? So, sorry if that was too long.
No, that's great. And what about data governance? That sounds expensive and bureaucratic. How are you going to sell that to leadership?
Right. Again, another interesting one. So, I don't sell data governance, right? Because the moment you say, oh, you have got a problem with your data, or you need to buy a tool that helps you to do data governance, that phrase itself makes people's eyes glaze over. So, I avoid saying, or rather, I sell it as avoiding expensive mistakes in the long run, right?
Yeah.
You talk to your customer in terms of AI readiness. You want to deploy AI. Great. AI learns from data. Is your data inconsistent, ungoverned? Does anyone own quality? What will the AI learn from your data? What are you expecting to come that? Right? So, give an example, for example, right? For instance, an example that I have used in the past is I was working with a company that wanted AI to predict which customers were at risk of leaving, right? Customer churn, big problem, right? So we looked at their customer data. Customer names were entered differently in different systems. Contact information was outdated. 30% of email addresses bounced back. Purchase history was incomplete because some sales went through systems that could not be integrated. Nobody owned or nobody, sort of had the ownership to ensure that this data was correct. And then I asked, how is AI supposed to predict churn when it can't even identify who this customer, one customer across your system, right? Silence. And then I did the maths with them, just like I explained to you the tangible ROI thing. I went through the mathematics with them. So if you want to spend 100K building a churn prediction model, but if you spend 40K over say a month or so, fixing your data governance first, and Xlytics does allow you to do that very, very rapidly, right? We'll standardize your customer records, we'll assign ownership, we'll establish the quality processes, and then AI will actually work. And then we can use that same governed data for 5 other use cases across your company. That's when it clicked. So selling data governance does not have to mean that I'm going to, solve all your problems, but at least put it in a way that they can take heed of it, do something about it, right?
Yeah, that makes complete sense. But there's always going to be that fear that if we don't move fast enough with AI, we're going to be left behind. How do you respond when you hear that?
Okay. There are 2 sides to this, and I have seen both the sides, right? So I have seen companies move recklessly, deploy everything, chase every new model, AI first in every initiative, AI first in every press release. 18 months later, they're exhausted, broke, and actually the 95% that all of these research is talking about is actually coming down to that, right? And on the other hand, you have other companies who move carefully, take heed of the advice and fix the data foundations first, and then deploy AI. For those companies, they are winning. They may not be grabbing headlines. It may not be revolutionary in the way that they're getting the press or whatever, but what they're getting is results, and that is what you want for your organization. The whole intention of putting AI is to improve something, right? You need to decide whether you want to move fast or move recklessly, right? And moving fast meaning does not have to mean that I need an answer in a certain amount of time. Moving fast means try things, learn quickly, scale what works, kill what doesn't work, and measure ROI at every step. Whereas on the other hand, moving recklessly means deploy everything, assume it will work, discover problems in production, scramble and spend more money to fix them. You cannot calculate ROI because you don't know how much you are spending, right? The companies that took time to fix their foundations got success very, very quickly, and the companies who have rushed still trying to get their first product really working.
Yeah. So what does success actually look like? Can you give us a picture of what doing it right actually means?
Success to me means being able to measure your ROI, and I gave you some examples. We reduced invoicing processing by whatever. It costed us X amount to build, but we are saving 35K annually, and it runs reliably with 15 minutes of human oversight per day. ROI, 12 months. That's what you want. That's what success looks like. It's not we are an AI ready first transforming the industry. No. It is we solved this specific problem, we measured the results, we calculated the ROI, and we are now solving the next one. That's what success means.
Okay, right. Time for the last question. If you could pick one thing that you wish every business leader understood about AI, what would that be?
That AI is a tool and it's not magic. We need to understand that. Right? I know it sounds obvious, but I don't think we have also internalized it yet, right? Just in the same way that you would not deploy an accounting system without thinking through your chart of accounts, your workflows, your training plan, your audit requirements, you plan it carefully, right? But when it comes to AI, we just think it can. Turn it on and it will figure itself out. It will not, right? AI is powerful. It can do remarkable things. And power has to be used responsibly. There's this famous English saying, uneasy lies the head on which rests the crown. It's exactly like that, right? If you rush to get AI quick, recklessly, you're going to have a very shaky head with a very shaky crown, right? Yeah. It's not going to rest very well. But what do I mean by responsibility, right? It's powerful, but what responsible means is very simple. Clean governed data to learn from, clear problems to solve with a measurable ROI, human processes around it, so invest in training, tell people about the outcomes because it's going to impact their life one way or the other, right? Realistic expectations of what it can and cannot do, and someone accountable for the outcomes. That's it. It's as simple as that. And look, last thing, right? I'm not saying be slow or timid. All I'm saying is be smart. Fix your foundations, invest in data governance, solve real problems with a clear ROI, measure what matters, and scale that works. It's not sexy, but it works and it pays back.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much. That was incredibly insightful and hopefully will save some very expensive errors on the part of companies. But obviously talk to Uxley if you'd like some more personalized advice on your project and how rushing into AI may be a poison chalice and it may not all end up going the way that you think it's going to. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Chris. And I think you've put it very well. It's a poison chalice, definitely, and we need to handle it very, very carefully, for sure. Thank you so much for your time.